Hi, welcome to Guardian's Fundraising Journey program. And I'm here with Lisa Friedman, co-founder and president of Quadrata Inc. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Yash. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thank you for joining it at a very early morning. I think it's early morning, 7:30 for you. And thank you for making it.
Well, that's the pleasure of being in crypto, which never sleeps, I suppose.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's a new year, so a fresh start for 2023, and hopefully this year is going to be fabulous for our entire industry. And
indeed, that's the idea.
So, indeed, starting to that, I would like you to, introduce about what is Quadrata Inc. and what does it do, and what stage are you in right now, and where do you want to go out from here?
Thank you very much. So at Quadrata, we focus on bringing identity, compliance, and reputation on chain with a goal to enable broader institutional adoption and more use cases in Web3. We believe that blockchain technology can truly power future financial services of the future and other sectors of the economy. But for that, it needs to be trusted and secure. And the components of reputation as well as compliance and identity are crucial for that in our view.
Digital identity, right? It's like on-chain KYC of individuals, organizations, end-to-end.
Yes, so it is meant for both individuals and entities, and individuals and entities can go through initial onboarding and receive a Quadrata passport, which they can take from an application to an application and also from a blockchain to blockchain. So our goal is really to remove friction from the user journey and also to make it easy for our partners to integrate with Quadrata.
I presume this KYC, this digital passport cannot be transferred to anybody else.
Exactly. It's a non-transferable NFT, which is attached to unique identity. So as a person, I can have several wallets, but unique identity and a unique DID in the passport.
So when you say, it's an on-chain KYC, right? But who verifies our credentials? So suppose, I basically used your product too. In fact, we have implemented that in our platform also. So thank you for that. First of all, and it's been, working excellent. So, but to understand the basics as to backend actually how it works out and who verifies our credentials as the user credentials actually.
Right. So Quadrata itself is a technology platform, so we do not see private user information, and we do not handle it. We work with third parties, which in turn may use reputable vendors to verify different parts of the identity. So, for example, if it's a person coming to onboard and go through the KYC process, you take a picture with your government-issued ID, and in the background, it is checked that you are indeed the person on the ID. And then your name is run against sanctions lists, watch lists, PEP lists, and so forth. And then your wallet is compared to the blacklisted wallets, as well as transactional distance to them. And then a combined risk score, AML risk score, is issued to you, after which you can mint your passport with that risk score. And then we're also working to add additional features, reputational features into the passport, such as credit information, accredited investor status, and so forth, so that applications can create more nuanced use cases.
So, basically, the entire verification of this individual is happening in that span of a minute or this one.
Exactly. If everything goes according to the plan, within 90 seconds, you should be able to get to mint your passport.
My passport, right? So where is this information stored? And basically we are a decentralized economy, and we are all this information is again with the decentralized applications. So when I take a photograph and I upload my passport or my KYC data, so where is this information stored actually?
Very good question. So none of your private information is stored on chain. So it is secured safely on off-chain, and then on-chain, the types of information that appears in your passport is the resulting AML risk score, your DID, which is a unique identifier, the country of your onboarding document, and so forth. So we're very careful about the identification risk and also re-identification risk. And so for more sensitive information, such as credit information, we are also not posting the score itself necessarily, but we can answer the questions from different applications to allow them to create differentiated pools, for example, in lending.
So, let's say if this is implemented with a DeFi platform, who is into borrowing and crypto-based lending and borrowing actually. So, will a user with a blacklisted address, will he still be able to mint the passport? And if so, if he mints the passport, can he still transact with the applications?
So there are a couple of questions there, so let's unpack it. If a user at the time of onboarding is presenting with a blacklisted wallet, they're not going to be able to mint the passport because their AML risk score would be 10. Now, if, for example, a user had a clean wallet and then they minted the passport in that wallet and then went and interacted with a blacklisted wallet or went into a mixer and their wallet has been flagged, and at that point their risk score increases. So at the time of the transaction, applications have an opportunity to query the latest risk score, and depending on the environment and your own structure, you can choose what it is that the user with that heightened risk score can do within your application.
Okay, so as a DApp user, basically I can decide how the user can function based on their score.
Right, exactly. So most of our partners use the passport to filter the users, right, based on some criteria. So either AML risk score, or in the future, we're talking about the accredited investor status, maybe credit score above a certain threshold, and so forth. So depending on what it is that your specific application requires for the users to be able to transact and interact, the passport can enable a feature which can prevent users from interacting it if they don't meet the criteria, or users can be permissioned into your application if they meet that criteria.
And so where do you get this data of the AML scores of these, these blacklisted IDs or blacklisted addresses? So where do you source this data, and how do you vet it actually?
Right. So as I mentioned, we work with third parties to perform data verification for various fields, and then we have what we call passport issuer policy, which is reflecting what we believe best practices in KYC processes as well as data storage are. And all of the passport issuers who are data verifiers in our ecosystem have to adhere to those policies, and then they also share their specific approaches to various steps of the process as well as data storage, so that applications can see how each passport issuer gets the data, stores it, verifies it, and so forth. And then the application can ultimately choose which passport issuers they will accept the passports from and the passport data from. So the goal is to be distributed in terms of information verification so that there is no centralized point of failure. And then as a DApp, you can select either you are working with all of the passport issuers in the ecosystem or you select specific few.
Super cool. So now let's say in decentralized ID verification, in decentralized identification, right? There are strategies. There are so many players right now. Like there's Polygon ID. So there are other key players also in the space. How do you think? Why should an application or just choose to use Quadata instead of other players? Why would they choose you?
Right. Well, it really depends. We are happy to collaborate with Polygon after they've come up with their Polygon ID. They've approached us to launch on Polygon. So you should ask them why they think that the solution is complementary. But in all honesty, there are several features which attract our partners to Quadata. One is that we're fully on chain. So you can query the latest status asynchronously at the time of the transaction. And for example, for KYC, AML screens are rerun daily so that if something changes, the AML score is updated and you're getting that latest information when you're querying the passport. Secondly, we do already have a number of passport holders as well as partners in the ecosystem. And so what that enables is interoperability and composability of the experience so that the user journey is quite streamlined. And once they onboard, they can go from application to application and get access to this more compliance-aware ecosystem. And so what's interesting is that the applications can then integrate with just a couple of lines of code into their smart contract and start querying Quadata passports, which already exist. So you can plug into a readily available ecosystem from the get-go. And a number of institutions which are locked out, so to speak, of permissionless DeFi, and now in the process of onboarding with Quadata, and they have digital assets liquidity, which they would like to deploy in more compliance-aware DeFi, which also is quite interesting to the applications that we're working with.
Super cool. So, at right now, at what stage you are in? Where are you going to right now? What would be your next steps to the goal, actually?
Right. So we, in terms of the fundraising, we raised our seed round in the summer of 2022, sorry, which is
congratulations to that.
Yes. And we're fortunate to be supported by both crypto native investors as well as investors from traditional finance. So the lead investor in our round was Dragonfly, and we also have prominent financial institutions such as Franklin Templeton and others as our backers. So our thesis of blockchain supporting future financial services is shared by investors across the board. And in terms of where we are in our development, we today are live and on mainnet Ethereum and Polygon, and stay tuned for announcements in the next several weeks about deployment on additional blockchains. And also, we are working on adding features to the passport, as I said. So today, features that exist include DID, country of onboarding, document, whether or not the holder of the passport is a business, as well as the AML risk score. And we're adding features which our partners need for their specific use cases, such as credit information, accredited investor status, age, and others.
Wow, super. So, like you mentioned that Dragonfly was your lead investor, right? And I think you have raised the fund 7.5 million as the seed round of this one. And what was your journey? I mean, like, how did it start? I mean, like, so you're one of the co-founders, right? I mean, like, from this scratch, actually, I mean, how did the idea came up, and when did you start working on it? How did you join your other co-founders? What was the initial steps? You know, the first 3-4 steps which prompted into what you are right now.
Right. So we actually spun out from another company, fintech company called Spring Labs. And at Spring Labs, the team has been using blockchain technology and cryptographic techniques for secure data sharing, primarily among private networks of financial institutions. And my now co-founder, Fabrice Chen, was the head of blockchain technology at Spring Labs and had an idea that similar approaches could be applied to public blockchain by bringing identity, compliance, and reputation on chain. So this idea was born about 2 years ago now. And at the time, saying compliance in DeFi context, was almost like using some, curse language. And my background actually is in traditional finance, or what I used to think of alternative finance. I was one of the early partners at PAMCO and led its European practice as the CEO of PAMCO Europe, where we were putting together hedge fund portfolios on behalf of some of the largest institutions and allocators globally. And I saw firsthand growing interest in blockchain technology from institutions as well as hedge funds for that matter. But knowing that most of them are regulated companies, my hunch too was that to fully embrace this technology, they would need more compliance-aware solutions. And so when I heard about this idea, it sounded very interesting. The innovation that's going on in the space is incredible. And I do believe in the power of blockchain technology to really expand global access for financial services and other sectors of the economy, speed up the transactions, as well as lower the costs of interacting in financial services. And so all of those features are quite exciting. And I was thrilled to join Fabrice on this journey and create this company, build an amazing team, and launch a product, which, as you said, now is more, I guess it's more evident to the marketplace that such a solution is necessary. And so we are seeing more peers entering the space and thinking about identity on chain from various perspectives.
Yeah, but 2 years before, I mean, like when you thought about this 2 years before, this was like, this, as you said, it's a cursed language, right? Identification, digital identification on blockchain, when the entire DApp applications are built towards, having a privacy-based systems and no central control or authority or no regulation or compliance. It's against the process, but you still went on board to do that. And is that because, I mean, like, is any specific incidents, or in general, you were, how did you see that there's a product market fit for this product?
Right. So what I think about is, in terms of identity, is stemming from two different directions. One is we saw institutions not being able to participate because by the nature of being regulated, they need to mitigate the risk of commingling with bad actors, for example, right? So they cannot commingle in the same pools with terrorists. And if you don't do any checks on the participants of the pool, you cannot say that there are no bad actors in such pools. So there is a whole group of investors and users which are effectively locked out of permissionless DeFi, for example. And so that's one area where we saw the need and the product market fit for identity. Another one is the users themselves, individual users who, for example, have built strong reputations in the off-chain world for creditworthiness or other aspects of their identity. And now they want to be able to leverage that on-chain. So we see the need for such individuals to reveal parts of their identity to be able to get, for instance, more capital efficient access to solutions.
So, did you do any initial test run? How did you validate that, this is going to, any test run with anybody, a proof of concept before going broader into the market?
Right. So the proof of concept was focused on speaking with institutions with digital assets, primarily hedge funds and proprietary trading platforms, some asset managers, which already have crypto assets, digital assets on their balance sheet, and now they may want to earn potential additional yield or stake those assets. And either they have quite cumbersome processes for evaluating existing pools, trying to do some top-down analytics at the time of entrance or at the time of transaction of what that pool looks like and what it may represent, or they just don't participate in DeFi at all. And hearing what our solution could enable, I gave them more comfort to interact in this way in DeFi.
When you said, the 7.5 million fundraise was raised actually with this one. So how did that journey go? Considering you already are into traditional finance, obviously, that was definitely an additional good factor to add on to that. But how did when you went into the market, how did you choose a lead investor? How did they choose you? What was the in a basic layman steps for the founders actually?
Right. It was a very interesting journey, and we were fortunate that we were spinning out from another organization. So our initial funding was provided by Spring Labs, which gave us flexibility to take the time to find the right group of investors with whom we want to partner for the long term on our journey. And as I said, our goal was to curate a combination of native crypto investors as well as traditional finance investors who believe in blockchain technology and what it can unlock for the financial sector. So one of the things that was really helpful is to leverage our collective networks and speak to the founders about their experience working with particular investors, and also describing our solution scene where in which portfolios of venture capital firms it could fit neatly. And so we actually met Hasib, the partner who led the investment at Dragonfly into Quadrata, very early in our journey. And we were fortunate in that he was open with his insights and feedback as we were going through product market fit and thinking about different features and technology to implement in our solution. So he's been a great advisor and a sounding board from the beginning, very direct with his views and what it is that they were looking for and what it is that he was seeing in the market. And that dialogue was very helpful to us in thinking about various features of the product, as well as thinking about the demand for the solution overall and where it could be applicable. One challenge is that for the first time in my career, I was faced with a situation where the interest in partnering from investors could not necessarily be met in full. So the round was ultimately oversubscribed, and we could not meet the interest from all of the investors with whom we would like to partner, and that was very disappointing, because we saw the value that every one of them could add, and we hope to be able to partner in larger size with them in the future. But that is something to be aware of, maybe not necessarily in this current environment, but over the fundraising journey, that it is ultimately a partnership for the long term. And as a founder as well as an investor, you have to find the right fit for such a partnership. And what's interesting, for 15 years, I was in an investor seat as well, where I was investing in hedge funds. And so this definitely goes both ways. It's you're partnering not just for the good times, but also for the challenging times. And you need to do your best to assess whether or not it could be a reliable colleague in challenging times also.
I'm like, the feeling of having the whole subscription is completely amazing, actually. Now, how long did it take for you from the first meeting with the partner of Dragonfly to going to the decision of we're going to lead the round of investment?
I think specifically with Dragonfly, it probably wasn't representative of the typical journey, just because when we first met Hasib, we weren't spinning out yet. So it was several months before we actually completed that transaction. Now, maybe a more representative journey, which again could be very different today, in a more challenging fundraising environment, was probably less than 2 months from the time that we first met an investor to the time that they committed capital. So, and again, each investor has their own diligence processes and approaches. Some are able to make the decision very quickly whether or not you're moving to the next stage, and then what it is that they need from you. And some have kind of more comprehensive, involved processes, and which require several different levels of sign-offs, and so that tends to take a bit longer, and those tend to be more traditional financial institutions.
I mean, in all this, the round is led by, participated by multiple investors, right? What was the easiest, completion, the round closure, and what was the longest time? Longest time, I think so, it's 2 months, you said, actually. What was the round closure where it took investment decision was done? What was the closest amount of time?
I mean, towards the end of the round, we went back to investors who exhibited interest earlier, who do not typically lead rounds, and we told them that we have certain amount of capacity. If they're interested in taking that, we could consider allocating up to X. And so they gave us responses, very quickly, within a day, 2 days. So towards the end, it was quite fast turnaround. But I think the most important thing is to find the right lead investor or combination of lead investors who will ultimately set the deal terms. And then as the next stage, going back to the investors who are not leading the round, but whom you would like to be part of your cap table. And then and see if there is capital available and allocations available at that point.
So other than Dragonfly, were you also speaking with multiple others for lead rounds, or obviously Dragonfly is the first to come. This one, or how did that happen actually? Were you speaking to other people? Were there any rejections?
Yes, absolutely. Look, again, when I don't know exactly the statistics for VCs for investing in a particular project, but when I was investing in hedge funds, we could look at 100 hedge funds and then meet with some percentage of that and invest in 1 or 2%. So the statistics are such that you do need to kiss a lot of frogs, so to speak, to find the prince or the princess, whatever you fancy. And so we did speak to a lot of potential partners, and as I said, it's really a relationship that you're building for the long term. So you need to make sure that it's mutually compatible. And the type of things that we were looking for from our investors are their own reputation in the space, their experience with Web3 projects, because for us it's also important to be able to partner with other Web3 companies. So the network aspect is incredibly important. We like that some of our investors also are entrepreneurs turned investors. So what they call vinterpreneurs, I suppose. And so they understand some of the challenges that founders go through in building the team and, finding the right product fit in the market, and staying motivated regardless of volatility in the environment and the news, which may not always be positive, as we know. So it's really a combination of traits that we were looking for in our partners, and we are fortunate to have found a great cohort, I guess, of investors that we're working with.
So what would, during this time, what would be your elevator pitch? Like a one-line pitch about Quadreta?
Yes, that it was quite difficult actually to come up with the pitch that really conveyed what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And we've gone through multiple variations of the pitch book. And again, being a startup and trying to be frugal with the resources that we had, we tried to do a lot of things in-house. And then ultimately we did find a designer that made it look a lot more professional at a reasonable price. So I would recommend that. We also practiced the pitch quite a bit, and actually we recommended a coach, a presentation coach that works with Y Combinator founders.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That could help hone in the message. So that was quite helpful as well. What else did we do? Yes, just gave our pitch to a number of friends, industry friends, and solicited feedback and iterated on that. And ultimately, based on the feedback from the marketplace, adjusted it. And
I think there would have been the initial pitch, what we would have done 1 year ago, and what we would have done in the final stage would have been completely different, right? And a lot of iterations, lots of changes based on the feedback.
Right. For us, yes, it was quite iterative. And again, given that my traditional finance investment experience was targeting different types of investors with different types of needs, I think we probably started a little too detailed in our pitch, and then we really streamlined it to very kind of core messages, and then just had examples and the background to give if investors were interested, rather than putting more information in the presentation book.
Wow. I mean, like, I should definitely get the contact of this speech coach, the pitch coach actually, the person, which will definitely be helpful for lots of founders. I mean, like, who basically use our application and platform also in the future, and help them raise the funds. And so, what was the craziest? What was the most craziest question which was asked to you during this process? Actually, like, there'll be lots of crazy questions and lots of crazy feedbacks. Can you remember any one of them?
I wouldn't say there was necessarily crazy feedback. I think what's important for the founders to keep in mind is that there are a lot of opinions in the market, and that you can't sort of please everyone. You really have to also take feedback into account, but at the same time, do your own analysis of the marketplace and recognize that all the work that you have done on the product market fit and on the subject of identity, in our case, and compliance in the space, is not necessarily replicated by the investors with whom you're talking to at the moment, right? So they may have initial reactions, but they may not actually have spent as much time thinking about the space, or if they had additional data that you had, they may change their opinion over time, right? And so you really have to know and believe in what it is you're doing, and be open to feedback, but not aim to change the product every time you hear a new piece of feedback. And even when you're live, that continues to happen, right? Because we have a solution that is meant to fit needs of a number of different partners, but as you know yourself, you have more nuanced requirements than somebody else, and then, you know, as a founder, we constantly have to think about resource allocation and potential benefits we can bring to our partners, and trade-offs in spending time and talent in one area versus the other. And so that journey starts at the beginning and continues throughout the evolution of the company.
So, I mean, like, after the successful fundraise and after the step implementation and everything, how do you reach out to your investors? What's the feedback, and how do you, is there set milestones completed? How do you respond back to your investors, and how do they actually come back to you with the positive feedback or negative feedback, whatever it can be?
Right. In general, I would say that people are hesitant to provide negative feedback. So sometimes as a founder, you have to read between the lines what it is that people are actually saying. A lot of the times, especially when you have a product that doesn't yet exist in the marketplace, you're solving something that hasn't been solved before. Some of the feedback may be that, well, how do we know that you're best positioned to address that, right? So there are different, as you mentioned, there are different ways to approach identity today. And, you know, some people believe that a different way to yours or to ours may be optimal in the future. And because there's so few data points at this stage, it's not yet substantiated, right? So that was the situation for some of the people, that they wanted to see kind of where the regulation is going, maybe wait for more clarity and what will be required in terms of compliance for DeFi, for instance, which is not something that we know today even. Some people wanted to see what adoption would look like and which types of approaches would get that. So there are different preferences that the investors have. Some others actually already had a similar solution in their portfolio, so not necessarily on-chain identity, but some part of identity is being addressed by their portfolio company, and so it may not be an ideal scenario where they have this kind of competing projects within the same portfolio, and it may not be optimal either for the investor or the founder themselves, right? Because you kind of, from our perspective, we want to be the identity project being recommended to the other projects in the VC portfolio should they need identity solution. We don't really want to be sort of competing internally within the portfolio necessarily. So in terms of positive feedback, people recognize the issue, the gap that exists, and they would comment on that they really see the need for a solution. And then as the next step, thinking about, do we have the right team to address that need? Do we have the right technology to make it easy for users to integrate and so forth? And so then there'd be more analysis. I do have to say that some of the investors really put a lot of thought in due diligence, and that in itself was iterative process where we met multiple times with our kind of initial contact, and then we would meet the investment committee. There would be follow-up questions and so forth. So it really depends on individual investors' processes and how they operate internally, but we did get a lot of feedback through the process.
Good. So how do you, so in your words, basically you're saying that it is always the founder's risk to accept what is the feedback he's going to implement and what is the constructive criticism and what is feedback he don't need to consider. So that's the risk of being a founder. That's your decision to make, right?
Right. I mean, even with very established companies, right? None of us have the crystal ball, and a lot of us have opinions, and so it's an art and science to really think about different perspectives, make sure you've considered them, and then take action on some, and then just keep the others in mind, and maybe keep collecting additional data points to see whether or not your decision was correct, as you go through the next stages, because sometimes you just don't have enough information when you're making the decision initially, and then as more information comes to the forefront, you can incorporate it into the next decision.
Interesting. So now, your investors would have set you some milestones, right? Over the process as well. Did you miss any? And if so, first question, did you miss any milestones, or because of the market scenario, or so on and so forth?
Right. So obviously the market has been very challenging across different assets, but in digital assets especially. The unwinding of Terra Luna and more recently others has definitely had an impact on liquidity in the space, and sort of the speed with which some of our partners can be integrating with us. So, if there is such a thing as a good outcome of a difficult environment is that there is now more realization, I believe, in the industry that risk management, thinking about overall exposures that investors and users take are more front and center, and our solution actually fits quite nicely into that. And so we're seeing, while the speed of integration is probably lower than what we have expected originally, what we're seeing is that there are more applications that are exploring compliance-aware solutions, identity solutions, reputational aspects that they want to incorporate into their environments. And so I think on a relative basis, we're actually well positioned to benefit from this trend of focus on risk management, compliance, reputation, and so forth.
Coming to the question, I mean, like this one, with your fundraising would have been, what do you think, I mean, personally, would your fundraising would have had an impact if you had actually persuaded in this market scenario? Is there any, would it have been different?
I think the key difference for projects raising money today is that there is less liquidity in the space, and investors can be more picky with their allocations. So for the founders, it's probably a more challenging journey. The good news is that investors still need to invest, and they're still looking for differentiated projects that are solving problems in the industry. And so, well thought out and well communicated projects should be able to receive funding and get backing for their diverse teams.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think 2023, we hope the 2023 year is much better in that aspect of it. We hope the 2023 year is much better in that aspect. The market grows and the liquidity grows in the market so that more founders can actually successfully, raise funds in the market too, which is obviously a good sign for the market, overall good sign for the Web3 industry as a whole. I mean, as a closing thoughts, what would be your thoughts for any of the fellow founders or people who are raising funds? I mean, like in a short, this one, what would be your closing thoughts?
If I had to narrow it down to one piece of advice, I would say do your research, figure out where VCs or investors are focusing, how they're thinking about the world and where they're looking for opportunities, and then see if you have any connections in your network that could actually make a warm introduction. And then do your best in convincing the investors that you're going to help them solve the problems that they're looking to solve.
Yeah, I think, thank you. That is definitely, so networking is most important part. I mean, like definitely reaching out to as many number of people and finding the right partner who believes in your vision, and then who can also enhance it, not just believe and also enhance it to a larger scale, right?
No, absolutely. I think the key is really finding the right match where you can have an open dialogue, where you can rely on your investors to understand the journey that you're setting out to go through, to support you through different environments, to be the sounding board, to provide you additional market feedback, and also to believe in you and your team and what it is that you're trying to do together.
Super. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining me in this session. And guys, do actually go to Quadrata and check out their download your digital identity passport, download your digital passport. And for platforms, obviously, we have personally explored the application. It's really good to use. And it can, definitely has very good use cases and how to use that. So Overall, all the best to you, what you're working on, and hope you in this year you're gonna make it and like complete all your milestones on all your roadmaps in time, and go for your next rounds of funding. So thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you for Data for joining in.
Thank you very much, Yash. It's lovely to connect, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.